If you tell yourself you're average, you will live average. If you tell yourself you're powerful, you will begin to act in alignment with that power. Belief is the foundation upon which habits, consistency, decisions, and resilience are built. Without belief, discipline collapses. Without belief, dreams shrink. Without belief, a person becomes a spectator in their own life, watching others move ahead while they stay stuck. But when belief is activated, everything changes. You start training your mind to overcome laziness, emotional impulses, and the desire for comfort that keeps most people stagnant. You begin setting standards you once thought were out of reach, and eventually, those standards become your new normal. You learn to interpret failure differently, not as a sign to quit, but as a stepping stone, a clue, a lesson that sharpens you. You stop fearing judgment because you realize the world is too busy dealing with its own insecurities to care about yours. You stop waiting for motivation and rely on discipline because you trust yourself to follow through even when it's hard. And most importantly, you reclaim control over your identity. You stop living by the expectations others placed on you and start living by the expectations you place on yourself. Self-belief is not a moment, it's a daily decision, a lifelong practice, and the core of every powerful transformation ever made by anyone who refused to settle for the life they were handed. Your environment is one of the most powerful forces shaping your ambition, your identity, and the limits you place on your own potential. Yet most people never take it seriously because it feels invisible. You don't notice how the conversations you hear, the attitudes you absorb, the standards people around you accept, slowly carve out the size of your dreams. If you spend your days surrounded by people who complain about life, who fear risk, who settle for mediocrity, who celebrate comfort and avoid growth, you will eventually mirror that energy without even realizing it. Humans adapt, that's our nature. If everyone around you believes life is about surviving instead of winning, you will start to believe the same. If everyone around you thinks discipline is extreme and ambition is unnecessary, you will start shrinking your goals to match theirs. Your environment is teaching you even when no one is speaking. It teaches you how hard to work, what's worth fighting for, what's normal, and what's possible. Most people never question it. They assume the world they were born into is the world they must accept. But the moment you start becoming aware of your environment, everything changes. You begin to notice how casual negativity drains your energy, how laziness spreads like a virus, and how easy it is to underestimate yourself simply because you're surrounded by people who never push themselves. You also start noticing how being around driven people elevates your standards instantly. One conversation with someone who thinks bigger than you can rewire your entire belief system. One afternoon with someone disciplined can expose every excuse you've been using. One example of excellence can make you realize how much you've accepted that's far below your potential. Books like Atomic Habits highlight how environment beats motivation every time. And that truth applies to your goals, your habits, your thinking, and the future you imagine for yourself. The people you allow into your life influence whether you move forward, stay stagnant, or fall behind. Some environments force you to level up. Others slowly erode your ambition until you forget you ever had any. That's why choosing your environment is an act of self-respect. You don't need to cut everyone off, but you do need to protect your mental space. Limit the time you spend around people who drain your belief, who mock your goals, who live in denial of their own potential and want you to join them. Increase the time you spend around people who challenge you, inspire you, and push you to become sharper. This might mean reading books that elevate your thinking, consuming content that strengthens your discipline, or surrounding yourself with people who are hungry for more out of life. Environment is not just a physical space, it is the information you absorb, the energy you tolerate, the standards you witness, and the behaviors you normalize. When you change your environment, you don't just change where you are. You change who you are becoming. Discipline is the difference between people who talk about changing their lives and people who actually do it. Yet most never develop it because they are slaves to their emotions. Discipline isn't about feeling motivated, inspired, or excited. It's about acting with consistency even when your mind tries to convince you to stop. Emotions are temporary. Discipline is permanent. The problem is that most individuals make decisions based on how they feel in the moment instead of who they want to become in the future. They wait for the perfect mood, the right energy, or some magical surge of motivation before they take action. But winners know that nothing great is built from emotion. Everything great is built from discipline. You can feel tired and still train. You can feel doubtful and still execute. You can feel overwhelmed and still move forward. That's what separates the exceptional from the average. Discipline means doing the work even when the reward is not immediate. It means repeating your standards every single day until they become automatic. People underestimate how powerful small, consistent actions are because they want fast results. But books like The Power of Habit show that identity changes through repetition, not intensity. One disciplined act won't change your life, thousands will. One disciplined day won't transform you, months will. And yet, none of that can begin until you stop letting emotions dictate your decisions. Emotion tells you to sleep in. Discipline gets you out of bed. Emotion tells you to take a break. Discipline keeps you sharp. Emotion tells you it's too hard. Discipline tells you to push anyway. And with every choice to follow discipline over emotion, you build a stronger version of yourself, one that can withstand pressure, setbacks, and obstacles. Most people fail not because they lack talent or opportunity, but because they lack self-control. They let laziness win. They let doubt win. They let stress win. They let instant pleasure replace long-term progress. They don't realize that every time they choose comfort, they weaken their identity. Discipline is the cure for that weakness. It forces your mind to respect you. It trains your brain to obey your decisions instead of your feelings. It builds resilience, mental toughness, and an internal strength that people around you can sense. When you live with discipline, your life becomes predictable in the best way. You know that if you set a goal, you will follow through. You know that your emotions can swing, but your actions won't. You know that no matter how challenging the path becomes, you won't break because you've conditioned yourself to endure. People often admire discipline from a distance, believing it's a talent reserved for the chosen few. But discipline is built, not born. It comes from repeated choices, from catching yourself slipping and correcting your path, from refusing to negotiate with excuses. Over time, discipline transforms into freedom. You become free from laziness, free from procrastination, free from emotional chaos. You become someone who can trust themselves completely. And once you master discipline, there is nothing in your life that stays the same. Taking full responsibility for your life is the moment everything shifts. Yet it's the step most people avoid because it's uncomfortable, confronting, and brutally honest. It forces you to admit that every excuse you've ever used, your upbringing, your circumstances, your lack of support, your failures, your hardships, may explain your situation, but they do not justify staying there. People cling to excuses because they protect the ego. If you blame the world, you never have to face your own potential. You never have to confront the fact that you could be doing more, becoming more, and demanding more of yourself. But the truth is simple. As long as you believe your problems are someone else's fault, you surrender your power to change them. Responsibility is not about guilt, it's about control. When you say, my life is in my hands, you reclaim the steering wheel. You stop waiting for luck. You stop waiting for others to save you. You stop depending on circumstances to magically align. Responsibility gives you authority over your future. The world is full of people who want success without accountability. They want the rewards, but not the discipline, the progress, but not the sacrifice. They point to their struggles as proof that they can't move forward, not realizing that every successful person has walked through their own storms. Books like Man's Search for Meaning remind us of one universal truth. Humans don't rise because their path was easy. They rise because they took ownership of how they responded to the challenges. Responsibility transforms a victim mindset into a warrior mindset. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You begin asking, what can I do about it? That shift alone separates those who stagnate from those who rise. The moment you stop blaming external forces, your mind sharpens. You begin recognizing your patterns, the habits that hold you back, the comfort you chase, the distractions you allow, the opportunities you ignore. And when you confront these honestly, you unlock the freedom to change them. You no longer waste energy arguing with reality. You accept it, analyze it, and act on it. Responsibility eliminates the illusion of helplessness. It forces you to see that your future is not a matter of chance, but a direct result of your choices. You start becoming more intentional with your time, your environment, your thoughts, and your efforts. Instead of drifting, you begin directing. People often fear responsibility because it means they can no longer hide behind excuses. It means their failures and successes are entirely their own. But that is precisely why responsibility is liberating. When you own your life, you realize that every improvement you want is within your reach, not someone else's. You understand that progress has nothing to do with luck and everything to do with consistency and courage. Responsibility turns obstacles into steps and failures into lessons. It makes you resilient, focused, and dangerous in the best way because nothing can break someone who refuses to give their power away. Fear is one of the most powerful forces in the human mind, yet most people misunderstand it completely. They treat fear like a stop sign instead of a signal, a warning instead of a weapon. Fear was never meant to paralyze you. It was meant to prepare you. It exists not to hold you back, but to sharpen your awareness, tighten your focus, and remind you that what you're reaching for actually matters. The only reason your goals scare you is because they demand a stronger version of yourself, and deep down you know it. People run from fear because they think it means danger, but more often, fear simply means growth. It means you're stepping outside the identity you've outgrown and stepping into a future you've never seen before. That discomfort is not a sign to retreat. It's a sign you're moving in the right direction. The problem is that most individuals allow fear to dictate the size of their dreams. They want guarantees before they move. They want certainty before they take action. They want a promise that everything will work out perfectly. But life never hands out guarantees, only opportunities. The people who win are not the ones who feel fearless, but the ones who act despite their fear. They don't wait for the fear to disappear. They walk with it. They use it. They allow it to energize their movement instead of suffocating it. Books like Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway emphasize this truth. The presence of fear is not a sign of weakness, but a natural response to stepping into something meaningful. Every meaningful achievement carries fear with it. Every new chapter begins with uncertainty. Every transformation requires stepping into the unknown. Fear becomes fuel when you stop treating it like an enemy and start treating it like information. It tells you where your limits currently are, and limits were made to be broken. It tells you what you truly care about, because you never fear losing something that doesn't matter. It tells you exactly where you need to push, exactly what you need to confront, and exactly who you need to become. Fear is a compass pointing you toward your next evolution. Ignoring it keeps you small, facing it makes you powerful. When you step toward the things that scare you, you build courage. When you step away from them, you build regret. Every person you admire has stood in front of fears that felt overwhelming, fear of failing, fear of embarrassment, fear of judgment, fear of risking everything for something uncertain. The difference is that they decided their dreams were more important than their fears. They understood that fear is temporary, but the consequences of avoiding growth last a lifetime. They realized that the only way to become unshakable is through exposure, by repeatedly doing the things that frighten you until your mind adapts and your confidence strengthens. Courage is not a personality trait. It's a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Fear will never fully disappear, and that's exactly why you must learn to use it. Let it raise your heartbeat. Let it wake you up. Let it remind you that you are alive and chasing something worth fighting for. Run toward the things that intimidate you. Challenge them. Break them. Transform them. And in the process, you will transform yourself. Rewiring your identity is the deepest, most transformative change a person can experience. Yet it's the one step people rarely commit to because it requires confronting the truth about who they are and who they've been pretending to be. Most people live their lives wearing identities that were handed to them by their families, their environment, and their past experiences. They don't realize that identity is not fixed. It is programmable. Every belief you hold, every habit you repeat, every standard you live by is shaping the person you become. You are not bound by the identity you grew up with. You are bound only by the identity you refuse to outgrow. The moment you understand that identity can be rebuilt from the ground up, your entire world opens. You stop being limited by your past and start being defined by your potential. Identity is created through repetition. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you believe yourself to be. If you see yourself as undisciplined, you'll continue acting that way. If you see yourself as someone with low standards, you'll tolerate things that damage your growth. If you see yourself as powerless, you'll make powerless decisions. But the moment you shift the way you see yourself, your actions follow effortlessly. Books like Psycho-Cybernetics highlight this truth. Humans behave according to the image they hold in their minds. If you want your life to change, you must first change the image you operate from. Most people try to change their actions without changing their identity. And that's why they fall back into the same patterns. They try to use motivation to rewrite behavior, but motivation fades. Identity does not. When you start telling yourself, I am disciplined, I am focused, I am capable, I am building something bigger than excuses, your brain begins to align with that identity. Rewiring your identity means removing the labels that limit you. So many people sabotage their own growth because they cling to identities that no longer serve them. They say things like, I'm just not confident. I'm not good with pressure. I'm not that kind of person, without realizing that these are not facts. They're self-imposed ceilings, and ceilings can be broken. Identity adjustment is not about pretending to be someone else. It's about revealing the stronger, sharper, more ambitious version of yourself that fear and doubt have been suppressing. You become intentional with your thoughts, ruthless with your habits, and disciplined with your standards because you understand that every choice is shaping the future version of you. The key to rewiring identity is consistency. You can't tell yourself you're becoming stronger and then live in your old patterns. You must act like the person you want to become even before you feel like them. Wake up earlier even if it's uncomfortable. Train harder even if your mind argues. Choose discipline even when laziness tries to seduce you. Over time, these actions reshape your internal belief system. You no longer have to force discipline. It becomes who you are. You no longer battle procrastination. It no longer matches your identity. You no longer get intimidated by challenges. Your identity sees them as opportunities. Rewiring your identity doesn't mean rejecting your past. It means outgrowing it. It means understanding that you are not stuck with the version of yourself the world told you to be. You are the architect. You decide the blueprint. You decide the limits. You decide the standards. And once you take control of your identity, your habits change, your mindset evolves, your environment shifts, and your life transforms accordingly. At the end of it all, everything comes back to a single truth. Your life will only rise as far as your mindset allows it to. The belief you carry, the discipline you build, the fears you confront, the responsibility you accept, the environment you shape, and the identity you choose to embody. These are not small adjustments. They are the foundations of a completely different future. Nothing changes until you do. The moment you decide to stop negotiating with excuses, stop shrinking your potential, and stop living according to limits you never agreed to, you become dangerous in the best way. You become someone who doesn't wait for permission, someone who doesn't fear discomfort, someone who doesn't fold when life applies pressure. You become the kind of person who shapes their own destiny. This speech isn't just motivation. It's a blueprint, a reminder that everything you want begins with a mindset powerful enough to demand more of you. When you choose belief over doubt, discipline over emotion, responsibility over excuses, courage over fear, growth over comfort, and identity over circumstance, you don't just change your habits. You change your entire direction. And once that shift happens, nothing in your life remains the same.